I'm still convinced that the most important leadership role that we have in our lives is within the walls of our own home. And on this episode of the After Dinner Leadership Podcast, I'm really pleased to welcome Randy Gravitt, who is the author of the book called Winning Begins at Home. His passion and his energy for his family, his love for his family, comes through really strongly, and I'm sure you'll pick it up pretty quick. One of the quotes which I like that he shared was, you cannot delegate your presence. You cannot delegate your presence. That's something I can do a lot better on with my family. In fact, my son is sitting in the room with me right now, and I know he would vouch for that. Something I can do a lot better on. Anyway, please take a listen, and I'm confident as you do so that your family will benefit from the principles that are shared. And if you find that useful, please pass it on and share it with members of your family, work colleagues, friends that you think will also benefit. Thanks for listening. We're delighted to welcome Randy Gravitt to our After Dinner Leadership Podcast. Welcome, Randy. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Simon. I'm excited to be here, and thanks for all you do to serve leaders. It's awesome.
Oh, you're a good man. The topic, winning beginning at home, is something that's very, very dear to my heart. So when your details come through, I was like, man, I got to speak to this guy. This is something I want to talk about in detail. And immediately we have something in common. We've got reasonably large families and quite a lot of daughters. You have 4 daughters, is that correct?
4 daughters, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
4 daughters and 4 son-in-laws now. I'm a little older, so our girls are grown up, and we have 4 son-in-laws and 4 granddaughters as well. But we also have 4 grandsons, so it's a lot of fun.
Amazing.
We love having a big family. It's so cool.
Great. Yeah, we've got 6 daughters, 1 son.
Okay.
4 granddaughters. So there we go. It is our custom here to ask a series of quick fire questions of our guests, Randy, and I've got 1 minute on the clock. I'd just like to go through these to find out a little bit more about you. You okay to start?
Go for it. Let's see what we come up with.
What's your organization?
Our company's called Lead Every Day.
Great. What motivates you?
Really, it's my faith. I feel like I'm supposed to steward my life correctly. We all given a chance, and so I'm trying to steward that. So I'd say my faith.
Right. Who's somebody that you admire?
I admire my mom. My mom is still alive. She's 84, and she's such a great heart, great leader. She's my hero.
Wonderful. What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself?
Passionate would be one of them. I'm a learner, and I would say energetic. I have a lot of energy.
I guess one last question. As a girl dad, what have you learned most from them?
Well, that's a great question. You put me on the spot here. I have learned the importance of seeing the world through their eyes. I've tried to see the world through their eyes. It's really hard as a man, wife and the 4 girls, so you're severely outnumbered. I've also learned you don't vote around here. We never vote, because if we vote, I would never get anything. I really probably don't get anything anyway when they were here. It was, they're like, they're gonna kind of help make the rules sometimes. But no, it was great. They were in so many ways where they're really like sandpaper that softened some of the hard edges I probably had. And I think God knew I needed daughters, so it's been a huge blessing. Yeah. They're the love of my life, truthfully.
Yeah, great. I love that sandpaper analogy. I've not heard that before. That's a good way to share that. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Great. And your mom sounds amazing, and I love that you pay tribute to her.
Yeah,
it's good. Have you inherited the passion and the learner and the energy from her, or did that come from somewhere else?
I think so. I would say she is a learner, and she definitely is passionate, and her energy is endless at 84. Right. Yeah, she's very inspiring for sure. I'm probably a lot more like her than I was like my dad, for sure. My dad was great, but just I probably got a lot from my mom.
Good. Well, I love that. Thank you. And we also love to find out, what 3 leadership lessons do you wish you had learned earlier? There may be echoes of stuff you've already shared, of course. But at a high level, what are the things for you?
Yeah, I think some things I did learn early, but I wish I had known the importance of them even earlier. Was just I talked about being a learner, just the importance of personal growth. I think the the sooner that a young person makes a decision to be a learner. I got a friend, he always says your capacity to grow determines your capacity to lead. And I love that. I think there's a lot that we just underestimate how important it is that we get started early on a path of trying to work on ourselves and the self-leadership piece. I think that's the second thing I would say is the hardest person you'll lead is yourself. And I wish I'd known that maybe even earlier than I did. I think if you can lead you've got a shot of helping other people. And then I think the people that you hang out with really are going to determine I got a buddy, he says that your friends determine the quality and direction of your life. And I think there's so much that's true about that it's who you surround yourself with is really going to position you. And I was around great people when I was growing up and throughout my career I have been, but I underestimated just how important that was early on. And I wish I had accelerated that even more, but because it's just, I wouldn't be where I am were it not for not only my mom, but other people who have been around, who have helped me in so many ways. And hopefully I've added some value to them as well. But yeah, your people, this process of growth, all that stuff, the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we got this personal growth, being a learner, not just learning, but you've used this kind of be a learner. I think is great. The importance of leading yourself, and also then who you surround yourself, the associates, the friends, I guess family even, are going to determine very much some of the habits that you end up having.
For sure.
That you end up behaving like. Yeah, I see that.
I heard somebody say one time that you become the average of the 5 people that you're closest to. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you look at people, who they hang out with, a lot of time it influences who they become, even how they dress, how they speak, where they go, all that stuff. It's very interesting when you start watching people who they surround themselves with. So I would just encourage your listeners to surround yourself with great people and you'll end up in a great place. I really believe that with all my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's a nice segue into some of the things you've been writing about. It's that like, what if you want to be around your family and see their influence, but you've got this whole pool of these other communities that you want to associate with, and then you've got these family responsibilities that you want to be close to as well. And sometimes there feels like there's a natural tension in that space, that pulls us away from those loved ones that are at home or associated with our home.
I think you chose the right word, Simon. I think there is tension there. I have people ask me all the time, how do you balance work and life? And I'm not sure. I think it's maybe a myth to think that there's work-life balance, because honestly, you're going to work. If you think about your waking hours, you're going to probably spend more time at work than you are at home. I think the key is to be at home when you're at home. So many times now in today's world, when we're so tethered to technology, it's easy to leave work and go home. Sometimes we don't even leave work. We work at home. A lot of people work out of their homes now with mobile workforce, And so technology can really war against us trying to be with the people that we're with. And I think it's very important for us to recognize that and to have a separation line. When we leave work, we really try to leave work, because I've thought a lot about this the last few months. I don't know that there's ever been a day where I've left work and I thought to myself, everything's done. There's really nothing else to do. That doesn't happen. I mean, there's always more work to do. And yet, if you're not careful, you'll go home. And I remember when the girls were small, we would have dinner and I love your after dinner, and then after dinner, we'd be reading bedtime stories. And it was so easy to be thinking about a project at work while you're there, but you're not really there. And if
yes,
I could just warn young parents, it's really, create some boundaries there where when you're at home, be at home. And I think those relationships can be so rich. And then when you're at work, I like the idea of the family understanding that whoever's going to work, mom or dad, they're representing us there as well. And they're proud of what you do, but they also know when you're at home, you're going to be really with them. And so there's a lot of intentionality that's required if we're going to live that way. But it's so easy for the technology's always there, the email, the text, and if we're not careful, we can fail to turn that off. And the next thing you know, we've created patterns that are not healthy. And I'll say one more thing about that. I've had people tell me, well, this is just a
Please.
season I'm in at work. And I've warned people, I think seasons can become patterns if we're not careful. And so I just would encourage people, don't make the excuse that this is a season I'm going through. There are seasons that are harder at work than others, but there are other people probably who can do your work at work. I'm not sure that, well, I am sure there's nobody else who can be the husband or wife or mom or dad that you can be. That's your deal. And so you can't delegate your presence, so to speak. It's important for us to get that right.
Yeah. What are some thoughts that you have around how you can check yourself on that? Because that drift, like you say, these temporary pressures of a work project, a particular intense period of,
Yeah.
I know for me, for example, travel
Yeah.
can kind of disconnect me a little bit from the family
Yeah.
because I'm, across the other side of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that may not. I'm going down a different route there. I come back to my question. How do you notice what methods can you put in place that would help you to say, hold on a minute, stop or pause and
Yeah. Well,
refocus?
I'll answer that second. I want to speak to what you're talking about with your own travel and all that. I
Yeah,
think that's where technology actually can be helpful, where we can FaceTime and stay connected. And again, I think we have to be intentional. But go back to your question about how do you create the separation? I want to say one more time that tension probably is the word. And somebody told me one time that balance. We're all looking for balance. That's always, how do you work-life balance? Balance, a good definition for balance is learning to live in the center of the tension. There's always going to be this tension. So I don't want to say you're going to do what I'm about to describe and it's going to just make it easy. It's always going to be hard. There's going to be tension here, and you have to pay attention to the tension. I think if you're going to make progress here. But I think some things you can do is create yourself a separation line. And as simple as this may sound, if let's say you're commuting to work and there's an exit that you get off of to go to work, stay in family mode until you hit that exit. And when you hit that exit, you trigger and you go to work. I would encourage you to be at work when you're at work. And then the same thing, maybe there's a red light or a stop sign at the beginning of your neighborhood, and you're allowed to talk to people on the way home and whatever. But when you get to that spot, you turn the phone off. You may need to go to airplane mode, whatever. I mean, if you've got if this is really a sickness for people, they may need to literally go, okay, I am shutting this down. And if somebody needs me bad enough, they'll just have to come knock on the door because I'm going to be at home when I'm at home. And that's probably an extreme example there. But when I get to that stop sign, I really want to be there. Now, what happens to the person who's working down the hallway in their home or in the basement and they're coming upstairs? Is there a doorway that you can walk through? And and again, you're trying to make that shift in your mind and in your heart. It still won't be easy. There'll still be tension to check your email one more time, to, send one more text, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And most of the time when I hear these problems, it's not that I feel like I'm bringing my home life into work. It's my home is what's getting crushed here. It's not my work typically.
Yes.
And so I think this is really hard, and I think there is a tension. And I think so many times when we think about home, we're not really even sure how to navigate all that. I think at work, we are I know what I need to do to get a promotion. I get raises there. I get my boss checks in with me. I have accountability there. At home, I feel like sometimes I'm just making it up. And so is there a strategy we can have there? And that's kind of where when we did Winning Begins at Home, that's what we wanted to do, is give people a blueprint to how do you build that. But I think some of these things that you're talking about, the separation line, that tension, being able to pay attention to that, I think those are necessary if we're really going to focus on those relationships that matter most.
Yeah, I know that the kind of definition of success is a key part to this, and I'd like to explore that some more with you. And I wonder whether there's something around your point around the clarity is also maybe the fulfillment sometimes is not as shorter on a shorter cycle. What do I mean by that? Is most of my children, well, all of my children are now adults. So my youngest is 18, so I don't have any young children anymore. But when they were younger, it's hard. You don't always see the fulfillment of the routines or the structures you've put in place within a 24-hour period. It's going to be over years that you get the payback, not always immediate in that week or month, you're going to have a rebellious child or a toddler that's screaming every time you go shopping or whatever the thing is, as much as you have happy times. So I think there's something around, sometimes we can see a more obvious, I put in effort, I get the return immediately, maybe from a work project, whereas the relationships at home can sometimes feel a little bit more of a longer burn and don't always feed that immediate kind of sense of achievement. I wonder if there's something there. There's no science in any of those comments, by the way, but just observations.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I actually had breakfast this morning with a gentleman he's 60 years old now, and he told me, he was telling this story about his dad, actually, when he was growing up, and some of the things that his dad did to mark him as a young man, and just how proud of his dad's passed away now, but how he his whole life has tried to become the kind of man that his dad spoke into him when he was a kid. And I thought that's so powerful that he's taken that his whole life. So you're right. Sometimes it takes decades for us to even realize the fruit of all the seeds that we plant. But I mean, if you think about planting seeds, I've got a guy on our team. It's kind of funny. He threw some pumpkin seeds into a fire pit a couple of years ago. And a few weeks later, he notices out of these ashes, he's got these pumpkin vines. And he's like, this is crazy. He threw an old pumpkin in there. And so the next year, he decided to try to plant some pumpkins. And he ended up with 1,000 pumpkins. I mean, it's crazy. He got like a little pumpkin farm going. And he's got some stuff he's doing to help the community with it. And pretty fun stuff for the kids can come and, carve up the pumpkins and all kind of stuff. But the thing that I noticed, just thinking back on when you're talking here, the thing I noticed about him was he didn't plant the seeds and then have pumpkins the next day. It was weeks, actually months. The labor went into this, and then there's this massive harvest. And for any young parent who's listening, I want to remind you that there is chaos now. I mean, we've got one of our daughters has 3 little boys that are 4 and under, and it's just wild when you go over there and there's a lot of chaos. But they're teaching them, what to say thank you and to say please, and not talk with food. The whole thing, it's just like parenting. Yeah. It's just so physical. I remember, you will too, when the kids are little, it's so physical. It gets way more emotional as they get older. And those are the kind of seasons that you want to pay attention to what's going on at home. But I think there's so much there that if you're not careful, you will underestimate how much you're marking them. And I think you have 2 choices. If you're a parent, let's just use that. Even in your marriage, the same thing is true, or in your work. I mean, if you want to think about it, you can live by design or you can live by default. If you live by default and just expect things to get better, we always say hope is not a strategy. Maybe my kids will turn out okay. I think if we design, again, with these fundamentals that we talked about in the book, I think there's some things that we can actually do to try to encourage that next generation to get it. And then the truth is, it's still hard. There'll still be tension because it's not your job to raise perfect kids. I mean, it's not going to happen. There are no perfect kids or no perfect families. It's your job to do the right thing and to encourage them the right way. And I would say to the parents who are older, you don't raise them to keep them either. You raise them to launch them out. And so what are you doing along the way to prepare them to go and make an impact in the world? I think that's really great. So that's kind of there's probably no science in all that either. I will say one thing. You get to decide, this is where you started. You get to decide with how you define success. And to me, I wanted to make sure that I love winning at work, by the way. I mean, I really do. But I don't want to just win at work. I tell leaders all the time, if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. I don't think the goal is to build some great company or team or whatever you have going on and then forfeit your family. That's not what we want. So there's got to be an eye on the ball outside of work as well. And if we get that right, man, there's so much life there when it works. And then when it doesn't work at home because we're not paying attention to it, home can be a really miserable place if we're not investing the right, again, I'll use the word intention there.
Intention, yeah.
So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's kind of where my mind goes.
I think it is. And what are some of the key traits or habits that you've seen successful individuals have in this both professional and personal lives?
Well, I think habits is the word. I mean, I think it's how do they set their routines up? I mean, I think there's a few things that are true. how do they use their time? I think that's one of the things that the people I admire the most, they're really focused on using their time correctly, stewarding their time correctly. The reality is we can make more money. We can have more people helping us. There's a lot of things that you can have more of. You're not going to have any more time. You have a limited amount of time. And so what you do with that and how you use that, and are you present when you are with someone? I think
let me pause you, Randy, for a second. You used a verb there, which is not that common a word. Steward their time. What did you mean by stewarding their time?
When I say steward, I think the idea of how you manage or take care of what you've been entrusted with. And for me, I'm a person of faith. I believe that our lives are a gift. And so what I do with what I've been given is, to me, I'm going to give an answer for that. And many people will look at that different ways, but it'd be no different if you had a boss who's trusting you with a department or trusting you to lead a team. You're going to want to do a great job in handling that the way that your leader would handle that. And so when I think about the way I use my time, and especially as I'm getting older, you realize that time is very limited. I mean, there's only so much that you're going to have in a day, obviously, but there's only so much that you're given in a life. And every day, you hear people say this and it feels cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. If people get to a point where they really realize this, every day is a gift. And I think if we use that time correctly, we have a tremendous opportunity to create impact and influence and encourage others and help them win. If we're not careful, though, we can, because of I've got my technology line here, technology will just suck our time away. And if we're not careful, we can get to the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the life even and go, that was not successful. I didn't steward that correctly. So that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it as a statement. And this sense of, when I think of stewardship, I think of like looking after something that's not mine.
You're almost a caretaker, right?
Yeah.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah. You're almost a caretaker.
Yeah. And thinking about that from a time perspective is actually quite interesting. This idea of it being a gift, you've been gifted this, and what are you going to do with it? How are you going to look after it? It's a really interesting point. I cut you off a little bit, and you were listing some of the traits or habits, and I'd love to just expand that. What other habits are important, would you say?
I think I mentioned earlier the idea of being a learner. I think you hear this all the time, but leaders are readers. I've heard that, my whole life. I do think there's an important focus on growth for those people who are the best leaders I know. They're constantly trying to think and assess and plan and improve themselves. Reading can really help with that. I would change the statement from readers or leaders or readers to leaders are learners. I like the idea of being a learner. Humility is a great trait for a really great leader. Passion is a great trait. I mentioned that. I want to wake up every day and really give my best to what I'm doing. It's hard. I mean, the world's going to say take a shortcut and all this kind of stuff. I think it's the best people I know, the best leaders I know. They show up and they try to do their best and they add value, and that, we all can continue to improve. And I think that would be the other thing, is just that continuous improvement. Last thing I would say is, for me, one of the things that's been helpful is to try to win the first hour of the day. That's kind of language I've given myself. How would I set up my morning routine to really propel me into a day that could create the kind of impact and enjoyment and all that stuff that I really want to have? I think people always say, well, what do you do what do I need to do during my morning, my hour? I think you get to decide. I mean, if you want to, drink water or do push-ups or say a prayer or read a book or go for a walk around your neighborhood, you get to decide what you do. But what is it that's going to position you to win those other hours? I think if you lose the first hour of the day, for me, it just puts me in this, I won't say a downward spiral, but it feels like it's harder to get on track if I've not gotten on track to start with. And so I would say that. And then if there was a second thing I would say there about my schedule habits, it would be, how do you win the last hour of the day? It's that the last hour of the day to de-screen and to leave the phone in another room and some of those kind of things for me that have been helpful to detach from the world and think about what went well today and who did I help win today and what do I need to focus on tomorrow, and how, almost like a coach would at the end of a game, how do you assess and adjust as you go into the next game? And That's the way I think about it day by day. And I think if you get to the end of the day and you can think back on who you helped win today, I think that makes you a winner. If all you do every day is just, you're just taking up space and you're self-serving rather than serving, I think you just leave a lot of impact on the table there. And so, yeah, those
Sure.
I think about the first hour and the last hour. Those to me are habits that are, they're just easy for anybody to say, I'm just going to take a step toward that and see what happens. And I'm guessing more people would be more focused if they would think about some of that.
Great. What is the impact that you're hoping that your work, as in Winning Begins at Home, what impact are you hoping it has on its readers?
That's great. We work with lots of companies doing leadership development and culture and engagement and execution, all that kind of stuff. We believe that I always say we dream about a world well led. I mean, how amazing would it be if everybody had a really great leader? If you've ever had a great leader, it's like really good for you when you have a really good leader. But if you don't have a good leader, we've all been there where it's like, it's not good for you. I really dream about that. I thought about that outside of work. How amazing would it be if everybody had an opportunity to grow up in a great family? And I understand that there's so much to that statement that just seems like pie in the sky. There's so many families that are messed up and so much poverty and so much. There's a lot of hurt and hate in the world. I understand that. But if I'm not careful, and you hear the airplane going overhead here, if I'm not careful, I can make that an excuse. Like, well, there are no great families. And what could I really do? Anybody who's listening who has an opportunity to make their family better, I think you have a responsibility to that. And I think the world gets better with more great families. And so I don't want to just try to build companies and organizations and help them be more profitable. That's great. We love doing that. But I also want to remind people you can't delegate your presence. I said it earlier. It's like when you're at home, you have an opportunity to mark the lives of the people that you're around. And if I could just expand one more little word there, I've asked myself a question. What would I need to do to live my life in such a way that the people who know me the best love me the most? I know so many leaders, the people who know them the best actually respect them the least. They're one way at work, but they come home and they just, I don't know if you let your hair down and you feel like you can treat them. That doesn't work. We want to make sure that the people who know us the best really do love us the most. And honestly, it'd be great if they liked us as well. It's they love us because they're obligated to love us. They live with us. But how amazing would it be if our families just gotten better and better because we paid attention to each other, we talked to each other, we untethered from that technology, and we were with each other when we're with each other. And I just think we have a tremendous opportunity to be closer at home if we pay attention to those. I would say it this way: proximity does not guarantee intimacy. You can live with somebody for decades. I know so many people, they've lived together for decades and they're still not close. They're still not together. Yeah. And so I think there's I think we can fool ourselves to think, well, we're a family, that we're all good. No, I think we have to be focused and intentional. And what are we going to do to build the family that we want? Families that last, Simon, aren't built fast, but they are built. And the really great ones are built. There's some intentionality, there's some focus there. It can be really simple, but if we don't pay attention to that, my friend Mark Miller, he always says no organization drifts to greatness. I don't think a family drifts there either. I think it's got to be on track with what it's trying to do and what it's trying to become. And if we get that right, it really could be amazing. And how amazing would it be if people got to grow up in that kind of stable environment? I heard you talking earlier about where you grew up and the family that you've got with your kids and all that. Again, you would be the first in line like me. There are no perfect families, but if you get this
absolutely
right, it does make it better for sure.
I agree. Yeah, my parents were, I've got 5 brothers, 5 sisters. There are 11 siblings, 11 of us, and they just put down some really, really powerful foundations for us. I love the kind of the essence of providing children with roots and wings. I when I see that quote, I always think of what my parents did for us. We didn't have a ton of money. We weren't on the poverty line, but we weren't wealthy for sure. And anyone saw my outfits as a young child, I would inherit my older brothers. That's the danger of being one of the younger siblings. You got the kind of the hand-me-down clothing
Yeah, that's
all the
great.
time. But what we didn't have in terms of physical things, we had massively compensated, and more importantly, a stable, loving, supportive environment for each of us. Went to a conference last week that were talking about attachment theory and thinking about this kind of having a secure base, and the importance of some similar message to what you've been sharing, just around minimizing distractions and being present in the home is such an important thing. It's not all about time.
If I could build on that for just 1 second, if you go to I don't know if you've ever been on a body of water on a boat, and you've seen there are these places where they have these buoys that are there, no wake zone. It kind of marks, don't go too fast in these areas. I think our lives are, I think really good, stable homes become like those waves are going to come and they're going to crash and they're going to cause it to go under at times. But if a parent provides a place, or even siblings can provide a place that is buoyant for that person, there is stability there. That thing is usually tethered to a cable that is, it's not going anywhere, and it can go under for a moment, but it's going to pop back up. And I love that picture of us having a stable home life. For anybody listening who has a stable home life, it has been life-giving to them. They feel like they have something they can always, there's a place of safety. For anybody listening who doesn't have that, or who hasn't had that, you know how challenging that can be and just how hard that is. And so I would just say to everyone listening, whether you receive that or not, why not decide now that moving forward, you're going to create a place, a family that is going to be life-giving and stable for that next generation. And I love that mindset. I just think I've benefited so much from not just my parents and my family, my brother and my sister, but the community, all that stuff. Yes. They say it takes a village to raise a child. There's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of support there. And if we get that right, it does become, it makes a life more buoyant, if we could say it that way.
Yeah. I like the image of the boy. There's like, it's anchored, but there's flexibility at the
right.
waterline, isn't
it's
there?
There's movement there.
It's not going to go too far, but it's tethered to a solid anchor, which I think is good. Yeah,
it's good.
Randy, I'm delighted to have spent this time with you. Why should someone read this book? What is it that it's going to help them to bring? I mean, you've touched on this, but almost in summary, what's the main reason someone should pick this off the shelf or order it from Amazon or whatever?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I would say for anybody who, and I've got a copy here, I'll hold up the book, Winning Begins at Home. I think for anybody who is in that camp of thinking, I want to have a great home life. I really do want to. I know there are no perfect families, but what could I do to take steps toward that? Again, I go to work and I know what my development plan is. I know what I'm supposed to do, but at home, what do I do? There's some fundamentals that are outlined here, and I'll tell you just a brief. The book is a 120-page leadership parable about a business guy, and I think people will really relate to these characters. It's a fun read, an easy read, pretty simple. I'm a pretty simple guy, but the most important part maybe of the book is the last 70 pages. After the 120-page parable, there's another 75 pages that are designed to be a blueprint to help people really map out the kind of family that they want. I remember years ago, I'm actually sitting here on my back porch right now, recording in our home. In our home, we've been here 23 years. Well, when we first built the home, when we built it, my wife comes to me and says, I want a house. And I'm thinking, we have a house. Why do we need another house? And she's like, I don't want another house. I don't want this anymore. We need more. For us, we need more bathrooms for the girls. We had one bathroom for all four of the daughters. And she's like, long term, that's probably not the best plan. We need a little more space. Could we build something? And I had a couple of options. I could just go to the local lumber supply place, grab some boards and come and throw it all up. Well, that's laughable. I'm not real good with that kind of stuff anyway, much less just even a builder without a plan, it wouldn't work. Laura had created a blueprint. She had gone and gotten graph paper, and every basically, Simon, square foot of the home was represented in one of these little squares on this thing. here's where the girls are going to be, and here's where the bathrooms are going to be, and here's where the kitchen will be, and all this. She lays this blueprint out, and it 23 years later, our home basically looks exactly like that. That we had to have a little help from an architect, but it was pretty much exactly what she drew. It served our family really well. I think the book to me becomes a blueprint for that person who's just like, I'm not sure, am I doing this right? And so after a few decades of learning what works and what doesn't work and the conversations, we tried to include all that and help people walk through that so they can really have a plan to build a great family. And so far it's been, we've only been out a couple months, but we're getting cool stories from people who are working through that. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're just trying to add value to leaders. Like I said, we work with leaders in the corporate place all the time, but I couldn't find any content to help us at home. And so I thought I'll just write some, and it's been a lot of fun to do that. So yeah, anybody that's looking to improve, I encourage them to get a copy of Winning Begins at Home. If you want to really help your people in your workplace, you can go to our website, leadeveryday.com, and we've got some bulk order there that you could get a copy for everybody. But if you're just looking for a single copy, you can go to Amazon or wherever you buy your books, and they'll make sure you get one wherever you are in the world.
Great.
It's also on audio. It's also on audio. You can get an audio copy, I think is what they tell me. So
good. Well, I appreciate you being so passionate about this topic. It's an important one for the world, and I love this idea of being intentional as a parent and within our homes. It's a really important part. And I love this. You can't delegate your presence. I think that's a really good thing that I'm going to take away from this conversation. So thank you. Wish you the very best of success in your pursuit of helping families to be a little bit better tomorrow than they are today as well. It's my most important leadership roles I totally feel are associated with my home and family.
Hey, that's great, Simon. Thank you for all you do. You're making a great difference in the world, and I'm grateful to have been able to hang out with you for a few minutes and have a conversation around the dinner table here. So it's great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. Best of luck. Thank you.
Our after dinner conversation is done. Our guest has left, and you're still here. You're very welcome. I'm glad you found the conversation engaging, and I have a favor to ask. Stop and think about someone you know that would find this conversation valuable. A family member, a friend, a colleague, perhaps an aspiring leader. Send it on to them. Share the message. Also, please subscribe or follow the podcast. It only takes a second, and it allows you and others to get easier access to these conversations. Thanks so much, and join us again soon for another episode of the After Dinner Leadership Podcast. You can leave now. I need to do this.